What's going on, y'all? How do you find the right musicians, right bands, artists to tour with, collaborate with, and to work with in your music career? So, this is an exercise that I like using called the Artist ID. The Artist ID has a lot of benefits. For one, it's going to show you different artists at different stages of their career from different places within the country that are similar to you, right? And these are artists that you could potentially work with, collaborate with, right? From working maybe from the ground up, working regional or local, and working your way up to maybe that A-list artist one day that you get to tour, to play a show with, tour with, collaborate on music with. And then the other element of the artist ID, it's basically a giant spreadsheet. The other element is you're listing contacts for these artists, right? So you're listing who is the manager, the agent, who is the producer, who mixed their album, who mastered their album, right? And what's going to happen is the bigger this list is, the more re- potential resources you have and more of a strategy that you can now build in who to reach out to and who to build relationships with, because the more artists you have on this list, the more consistent names you're going to see agencies and agents pop up over and over again. You're going to see some of the same producers. You're going to see some of the same management companies, right? So these are people you're probably going to want to network with. And every agent that might represent a giant star, let's say an agent that might represent a Drake or a Jay-Z or a Foo Fighters, a Taylor Swift, right? Whoever it is, they also represent newer up and coming acts that are just starting out in their career. And those are the agents you probably want to start a relationship with, right? So if you want to maybe one day at least have the opportunity to open a show for Jay-Z, and this agent also represents an artist that's playing a 200-person club, you maybe want to open up for that artist, right? In that 200-person club. And maybe it's an artist that's unknown. So you're going to crush it. You're going to kill it trying to get people out to the show and to build a really positive relationship with that agent, that manager, that label, and with the promoter, right? For really going out there, really being strategic in who you're playing shows with. So let's take a look at an example of what this artist ID exercise looks like. So here is a spreadsheet, of course, on spreadsheet on Google Sheets, right? So the way this works is you're going to list the artist right here, the artist name. Then you're going to list the agency, agent, so categories. I'll explain the categories in a second. Who is the management company manager? Who is the label? You're going to list who's the producer, mixing engineer, mastering engineer, and you can do this for as many albums as you want, right? So again, as I mentioned, you're going to start seeing a lot of names and companies pop up over and over and over again. Um, I mean, you could basically just take a look at this, right, and create a spreadsheet very easily for yourself. If you want a copy of the sheet, then just go to makingitwithchrisg.com/artist ID, and you'll be able to just get the sheet right there for free for an email. I'll be asking for you for an email to get that artist ID. But just an example, here's an artist ID I started recently for an artist I work with. The highlight just means these are artists we've kind of went through for even ad targeting, right? So this is also a great list to figure out which artists you're going to target for ads, for digital ads, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, right? But these are fans or artists whose fans we're targeting to build up this artist brand. And by ad category is another column I added. Ad category, that is just a Facebook, Instagram ads thing where I basically put all of these artists in the same group and I call that group the golden era. So here, those are a couple of examples, right? And with this artist ID, you want this list to be as big as possible. Ideally, you want to have at least 20 to 30 artists for each of these categories. So let me go through these categories. The first category is the A-list artists. And these are artists that are playing arenas, stadiums, amphitheaters, right? They're selling thousands of tickets to a show. They're a household name. Most people are probably going to recognize who those artists are. Next, you're going to have emerging artists. Emerging artists are newer artists that have maybe an album or two out. They have a song that's starting to blow up, and it could be emerging at any point, right? But typically, they're newer artists with one or two albums out, and they're starting to really climb in their career, and they're starting to play bigger clubs. They're starting to play clubs in the 2000 capacity range, right? So a lot of House of Blueses, Hard Rocks, Fillmore's, right? They're starting to play those types of venues around the country. And the next category would be legacy artists. These are artists that have been around for a very long time, 10 years plus. They're a household name within the genre. So people that are within the genre will definitely recognize these artists' names, but they're not playing arenas anymore. They're not playing stadiums anymore, or may never have, right? But these are artists that are recognized within that scene, and they're typically playing anywhere from a 300 person club to a 1,500 or maybe sometimes 2,000 person club, depending on the city they play in. Because in every city they're going to have a different size following, right? And then one other category which I didn't have on here, these are the baby bands or baby artists. And baby bands, what those are, these are new artists that have just been signed maybe within the last 2 years by a label or agency. And those baby bands, every agent signs baby bands. And what they're doing is just starting out in their career, or they're just starting to really develop their touring career. And they're working with an agent now. They may have been touring independently and now started working with an agent. And they're typically playing the 100 to 750 capacity rooms. Some markets, they might play 1,000 capacity rooms, but they might just in general play 200 to 400 capacity for most of their tour, right? And those are the baby bands, the baby artists. And then you have your local, regional, independent artists, right? These are artists that don't have an agent yet, and booking all their own shows. They're probably only playing locally. They're playing within their region, and those are another group of artists you want on your list. And the reason you want to follow those artists as well, because these are artists you now collaborate with in your local scene. These are artists you can play shows with, right? You can find the artists that are serious and actually are trying to build a business and try to grow a following. So the local regional artist is the best category to start off in. And the way you work your way up the ladder, it starts with the local regional first, then you work your way up to the baby bands, you work your way up to the legacy bands, then to the emerging bands, and then maybe one day to the A-list bands, right? And the great thing about that focus, and we've talked a lot about tour strategy and everything on the podcast, and we will talk more tour strategy on the YouTube channel with these quick tips on Tuesdays. But the one quick thing to keep in mind for local regional shows, let's say you're starting to build your career regionally, right? And I always say try to focus on no more than 5 to 10 markets. So let's say you start in Orlando, Florida, where I'm at, and you have 4 markets in Florida, a couple markets in Georgia, a couple in South Carolina, a couple in Alabama that you're really starting to build up, right, and build a following in. And if you can sell 100 to 200 tickets per show, what you can do that creates leverage, right, with these, especially with these legacy baby bands and maybe not so much the emergency artists because they're playing bigger venues, but with the baby bands and sometimes the legacy acts. So what can happen is if you become the go-to artist in Orlando for your genre, for a certain agent, right? They're going to have ask you to open up for all their baby bands. And if you continue just being the opener in Orlando, you're not really going to grow much, right? So if you are able to build up your headline career around cities around your hometown, then what you can do now, you can do a show swap for multiple shows, right? So now maybe you open up 4 shows in Florida or whatever region you're in for those baby bands, but now when you're actually worth tickets, 100, 200, 300 tickets in those 4 5 to 10 markets, um now you can maybe trade 10 shows for 10 shows, right? Hey, you come to my region, you're still developing and building up in my region, I'll give you 10 shows, but you have to give me 10 shows in one of your stronger regions. So now all of a sudden you have a 20 city tour with a newer artist on a big agency, maybe even a label behind them, right? So that's how you start really building up your career and building up your network by working really, really hard for these baby bands, local, regional, and just really working your way up the ladder that way. So everything is done better when it's done with a strategy, and that's a really good strategy, right? And so how do you find some of these bands? Just a couple quick resources. I mean, I love using Spotify as a resource, right? So let's see, go to Spotify. Sherelle was on a podcast recently, so let's take a look at her page. If you go to Sherelle's YouTube page or Spotify page, I'm sorry, scroll down a little bit and you will see fans also like, right? So click on see all here, and here you just see a bunch of similar artists. And really what you can do, you can just go down this rabbit hole, right? And just click on another artist. So let's say click on Mr. Wallace. We'll go down here and see fans also like. So we'll click on that. And you're just gonna find all kinds of artists just on Spotify alone, right? So Spotify can be a really, really great resource. Where it gets a little hard sometimes is finding your local regional artists, right? So Another resource here, you can go through Bandcamp, through some search through here, to find different artists from different places, um, or a local band called Leisure Chief based in Orlando. Shout out to those guys. What we can do also is go to local bands that you know, right? So you find one local band and then just start going through all their shows, right? Click on some of these shows and see who they played with, right? Um, and that'll help you find some artists as well. So you see who other artists played with on shows. Other thing you can do is you go to your local venues, go to all your local venues. So this is called a venue called the Social in Orlando, and just see who's playing there, right? And when you find some of the smaller acts like the baby bands, like click on those pages and see who's opening, right? So I would click on details. This is at the Beecham. This is a bigger venue. But see who the openers are for shows, right? And most shows that are in smaller venues, they're going to have local openers, and see who those openers are and see or sometimes there's a local band big enough to headline your venue, especially if you go smaller, right? So if we in Orlando, we have a place called Will's Pub. Let's check that out. That pub's up. Yeah, willspub.org. If I go to their event calendar, they usually have a lot of shows and mostly local. Yeah. So like I'm gonna find all kinds of shows here, right? So again, I'm just go through all these artists and I research these artists, and that's how I find my bands, and that's how I build my list. So as I mentioned, many benefits to doing this artist ID. It's gonna help you discover new artists. It's going to help you discover people you can collaborate with, discover people you want to build a relationship with. And just the one disclaimer with the relationship piece, you always want to add value to the relationship, right? Figure out when you reach out, what is it that you can do to add value to that relationship? If there's a baby band coming through your market and you're not opening for them, or maybe even emerging artists, or some artist that you know that's not going to sell out, like an artist that really needs help with promo, and it's an agent that represents a bigger artist you really want to work with, then reach out to the agent, reach out to the promoter, and ask, what can I do to help promote this show? I am a local artist. I am within that scene. I know artists in that scene, and I want to help get some people to your show. I can help promote. I can help pass out flyers. I can help promote virtually, right? Whatever of value you can offer. You can create graphics, you can create content, you can come shoot the show for free and create some content for your artists, right? How can you deliver value? And the more value you deliver, the faster you're going to develop these relationships. So use the artist ID, use it as a strategy. You're going to help, really going to help you hone in on who to work with and who to reach out to versus reaching out to everybody. It's going to be really hard to build relationships with everybody, but you know the specific people that you want to reach and build a relationship with is just going to be such a better strategy and such a better use of your time. So thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, click that bell so you get a notification when we have new videos coming out. We're trying to do these quick tips every Tuesday. We have our Liberty sessions premiering tomorrow. Our first episode where musicians and creatives are talking politics. We'll talk a little creative as well. And then of course, Making It with Chris G, the flagship show on Thursdays. So we'll try to get more and more consistent with the show, starting to get some help and building a little team around all this. So I appreciate you guys' patience and us not having a video every week. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or anything, leave a comment. If there's any videos you want us to create content around, leave a comment in the video and leave a comment on this video as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, spread love, positivity, and joy in the world, and live the life you love. Peace, my friends. Live the life you love.